Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. It is always a joy to see you, whether you are a longtime fan or whether you have come today just to hear the fabulous Samantha Downing and a twisted love story. And we will hear from Samantha in about 30 seconds. Meanwhile, I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 14 going on 15 novels of suspense, and 16 and 17 too, but I'm not allowed to tell you that. My current book is called The House Guest, and it is out right now. My new book comes out in February, and it is called One Wrong Word, which is sort of scandal meets the undoing, greed, gossip, and revenge. But you'll hear all about that when the time comes, because today I want to tell you about a twisted love story by Samantha Downing. I am laughing because I love you, Samantha Downing, and your books are, every single one of them is twistier, more mordant and dark and unique, and that Samantha Downing your writing style is astonishing. I'll tell you more about it in a minute, but let me tell you what Geneva Rose says, you all, and then we will get to Samantha herself. Hey, Diane, I see Diane Dick and Shannon Hansen is here, and Pamela Fry Priest. And Diane says, I still check my K-cups. What does that mean? I think it's a typo, but we'll see what that means. You'll let us know. Everybody is saying hello to you. Pamela Fry Priest says, hi, Hank, Samantha, A Mighty Blaze, and everyone. And we all say hello to you. To Geneva Rose is talking about a twisted love story. She says, subtle, compelling, and clever. A twisted love story will take you on a tense and emotional thrill ride that doesn't let up until the final page. Downing has crafted a complex, masterfully written tale that will have you rooting for the dysfunctional couple while simultaneously not trusting either of them. And that is brilliant. That is exactly what a twisted love story is. And it comes out next week, July the 18th. Samantha, what is it like in this lead-in to you have had so many books and they're all so blazingly successful. Is this fun for you? Is it tense for you? Tell us what it's like.
Well, first, thanks for having me. It was great to be here. And I just wanted to say, Diane, in the comments, I know she was referring to K-cups, which were in my last book, For Your Own Good.
Of course.
The K-cups. So thank you. I still check my K-cups too. So there you go.
You reminded me of that. And let me just interrupt you quickly to say that was For Your Own Good, right?
Yeah.
It took place in a school. And K-cups were pivotal in the story. And I have to say, Diane, thank you. You're so right. And it was hilarious. And thank you for doing that. And because, and let me just interrupt again, I know it's me and that's what I do. We're celebrating today the second anniversary of my Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze, which means you all have been with me for 2 years. And that's amazing. And Samantha was one of the very first, if not the very second. I think you were number 2. I think you were the second guest we had on Crime Time. And that's amazing. And that's where you all heard about the K-cups. So welcome back.
Thank you. It's great to be back. Yes, I did not have a book come out last year, so we did not talk last year, but this twisted love story is the next one. And yeah, it is still fun for me. Writing is always a frustrating process and a fun process. So it can be both. I'm a pantser, so I don't use plotting or outlines or anything like that. And often I write things that just don't work. So I actually throw out a lot of stuff, and which is why I didn't have a book come out last year. And so yeah, it's sometimes I write a lot and I think it's great, and then it's not, and it doesn't work. The idea doesn't work. So, but it's fun for me to discover the story that way. Plotting for me sort of takes away from it. So it is still fun and it is still frustrating.
It's interesting from our point of view, and that's so interesting to say that you threw away some things that you wrote during the year previous, because it also lets us know not only that you're such a perfectionist, but that when the book does come out, when there is a book that you do love enough to let the rest of us read it, that wow, it is really going to be good. So was there a moment in A Twisted Love Story that you thought, this one is going to work?
I think I can tell by the way I feel when I'm writing it. Sometimes it just clicks and I love writing it and I can't wait to get back to it to see what the characters do next. And I felt that way about For Your Own Good as well. And then there are a lot of books where I feel like I'm just pushing it and I'm pushing myself to write. And I think that just comes through in the writing. When you love it, it comes through in the writing. And when you don't love it, it comes through in the writing. And so it just is more of a feeling to me. And then, of course, then it all comes down to what my editor thinks. So there are more people it has to go through before it actually becomes published.
Well, and thank you all for the greetings, you all. Emily is saying happy anniversary, and so many other people are saying happy anniversary, and it is so nice. Susie Sharp, thank you. It's really been quite astonishing to be here for 2 years. And when I look at the list, I'll take a minute, Samantha, when I take a look at the list of people we have all talked to and connected with over the past 2 years, it's really quite astonishing, the level of literary talent that we have here and the engaging and hilarious and generous and brilliant authors that we have hosted here, and we hope to be going along for a very long time. Thanks to all of you, and thanks to you, Samantha, who helped us get going at the beginning. I do love it, though, the idea of, I was talking to Michael Corita, who was one of my favorite authors the other day about this, and he's done that too. He's put books aside. And I said to him, it seems like sad because maybe if you had just kept going. And he says, well, the book still exists. Sometimes it just isn't the time for the book.
Yep. And that could be true too. I have yet to pick up something that I've done before and do that with it, but you never know. Typically I'm just I'm done with that idea and on to the next. I don't have a lack of ideas. I have a lack. But an idea is not a book. You have to take that idea and make it into an entire book. And some ideas just aren't big enough for that. I mean, and I don't learn that until I've written a little bit of it.
Which is so brave of you to persevere, knowing that there might be a moment where you say, this isn't the one. But I guess you can't find the one unless you search for the one.
Until I write it, exactly. And there's that old saying, writers write what they know, but the second part of that saying is, but they don't know what they know until they write it. And that's kind of what I am. I don't know if I really have an idea or just a book or just a premise, the premise versus the book. Sometimes you have a great premise, but it doesn't turn into a great book.
And some writing students never learn that. They think they can pound or force something into being, or sometimes it just turns into stretching and padding, which doesn't work at all. But I do have to say, I read somewhere that Katie Couric said that she loves everything that you wrote. Do you remember when you heard her say that?
Oh yeah, it was on Katie Couric Media. That quote was on. I think, I'm not sure if it was her or one of her editors that said it, but yeah, it was pretty amazing to see that on Katie Couric Media for sure.
That's wonderful. And Emily is saying that is wisely said. An idea is not a book, but an idea that turned into a fantastic book is A Twisted Love Story. And in a minute, we'll hear about everything that came into making. I'm really not talking very well today. You just have to hear about everything that went into making A Twisted Love Story into the fabulous and twisty book that it is. If you are new to Crime Time, if you are new to A Mighty Blaze, welcome, welcome, welcome. You should know that A Mighty Blaze was created 3 years ago now, 3 years ago by the fabulous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us all learning about new books and staying together as a community and kind of getting to know each other as well along the way, as we have here on Crime Time for the past 2 years. And we will continue to go forward, bringing you top-notch new authors and top-notch new books, just like Samantha Downing and A Twisted Love Story today. Samantha Downing, let me tell you very quickly, is the author of the best-selling My Lovely Wife. You've all read My Lovely Wife, of course, with that iconic cover with the knife. You remember that. Which was nominated for the Edgar, ITW, and Macavity Awards in the US, the CWA Award in the UK, and the winner of the Prix d'Electrice Award in France. Her second book, He Started It, was released in 2020 and became an instant international bestseller. Her third thriller, For Your Own Good, with the K-Cups, was released in the US on July 20th, 2021, and was an instant USA Today bestseller. A Twisted Love Story will be released in the US on July 18th, 2023. No pressure, as we were talking about before.
No pressure.
But the review,
1 week from today. 1 week from today.
A week from today, and you will all hear about it here first. What are you doing to get ready for it?
I have been doing a lot of promoting online and promoting on social media, and I had some bookmarks made for my local bookstores, and starting to do interviews. You're my first live interview with Hank, so that's perfect.
Oh, that's so great. I love that. Thank you so much for that great honor. Well, we will do you proud. You know, I'm a massive fan, and A Twisted Love Story is just as twisty and such a tightrope, and we can talk about that in a minute, but just basically, and you're going to have to do that over and over and over, starting in about a week. But tell us about the book.
The book it really revolves around Wes and Ivy, who are in a tumultuous relationship. They've been on and off for 10 years. And I think of them as a tornado, and they barrel through life and just doing what tornadoes do. And lots of things and lots of other people get sucked into their path, sucked into their whirlwind. And there are other people that jump into their whirlwind and insert themselves into it. And lots of bad things happen, including death sometimes in that whirlwind. But like all couples, they are completely focused on each other, and everything else is a little blurry. They don't really see what they're doing to other people until something happens. They're not trying to do anything to other people. They're not psychopaths. They're just very self-absorbed into their own relationship. And the idea behind it was I really wanted to write a book where the relationship was a character in the book. And that's what it is. Wes and Ivy are individuals, but when they come together, they become something else. And that relationship itself is the driving force of the story.
That is so interesting. And I've never heard it put like that. And I'm sort of replaying the book in my head now, imagining that. And that is so right. What was the thought process of coming to that, as that the two things together are more than the sum of the parts? Talk a little bit about that.
There was a small bit of it. The book I threw out had a small subplot about a relationship, and something about it struck me. And I thought I could write a whole book about a relationship. Like I could turn that relationship into a thriller. And that's when the idea really started. And of course, ended up throwing that book out for other reasons because it was just not very good. And I concentrated on that small little part and turned it into a whole book. And while their relationship is the central one of the story, every character in the book has had relationships or is in a relationship that makes them who they are and makes them do what they do. So it's not just Wes and Ivy, it's every character in the book. And really, love is a character in the book, and the effect love has on people, for good, bad, ugly, whatever.
So much to talk about in that, because I do, and it's not only that the people and everybody in the book is in a relationship, but everyone who is reading the book has been or is in or wants to be in some sort of a relationship, or has a memory or a thought or a hope about a relationship. So even though Wes and Ivy are volatile, they're very relatable because we understand how they feel in various parts of their lives. Did you think about how readers would deal with those two?
I did. And to me, I wanted them to be relatable in parts. I wanted you to be able to look at the page and say, I've had that conversation before. Oh, I remember when I was with somebody who was just like that when I was young or whatever. And so I did want to make it recognizable at some level. And I have heard from some early readers who have said, that, wow, that makes me think of this guy I went out with or this woman I went out with. And it was just like that. And so it is fun to sort of hear that. But it doesn't always make people bring the best feelings to the book. It may dredge up feelings they don't like. And for some, it dredges up nostalgia. So we always bring ourselves to a book when we read it. So I think everybody's going to read it differently, and everybody's going to have a different take on Wes and Ivy. Now, I personally think they're perfect for each other. For good or for bad, I think that they have found their perfect partner in life.
And that's one of the things that makes the book so wonderful, because no one else will be able to deal with each other like Wes and Ivy do. Can you give us a little character sketch of each one of them?
Yeah, Wes comes from the Midwest. The book takes place in California, and he comes from the Midwest and moves out to California for college, where he meets Ivy. And he comes from a very strict conservative background, where he learned that he would have to sort of maneuver around his parents to, sneak out at night and that kind of thing, because they weren't going to let him do that. Ivy comes from a totally different background. She comes from far northern California, where they grow marijuana, and her parents had a marijuana farm. She grew up on a marijuana farm and had constant chaos growing up of raids on their farm. And even though marijuana is legal in California, you have to follow all the restrictions or they were going to come after you anyway. So she grew up with people that disappeared when they went to jail, or her parents constantly having to help someone. So she had a far more chaotic background. And somewhere along the way in college, they found each other, and it worked from those two different backgrounds. Him with the sneaking around and her with the chaos. It came together and it worked.
And we all think that, I think one of the sort of dreams that people think they have is that it would be amazing and perfect and wonderful to meet your match, the person that you are wildly, passionately, madly in love with. And that when you do, your life will of necessity be happily ever after. And this is, you've taken happily ever after and just twisted it on its head.
I try to. That's what I try to do, is take something that you're familiar with and twist it into something new and something very extreme. Typically, I go for the most extreme version because it's a book and it should be entertaining. But there are kernels of reality in it.
And so how did you progress in writing this? How much did you know when you started about what would happen? And did Wes and Ivy and their setting and the people involved in their lives, did they sort of take over the story? Talk a little bit about how this book evolves.
Yeah, because I don't plot anything. I don't know any of the details in advance. I knew that their drama led to bad things and that they had something in their past, and I didn't know the details. Some night when everything went too far, somebody ended up dead, and now a detective is looking into them. For other reasons, the detective is looking into them, which come up in the beginning of the book, but something sparks her mind into thinking there's something not right with this couple. And that becomes sort of the big challenge for Wes and Ivy, is they now have a common enemy, the detective, and they have to stick together. And they've never been able to stick together. They break up and get back together all the time, but they have to have a united front against the detective, and not so easy for them.
Pamela Fry-Priest says, this sounds so good. And Tori Whitaker says, so enjoying this conversation.
Thank you.
But when you're talking about, they break up and get back together, and everybody's broken up and gotten back together, but Wes and Ivy are volatile. They don't just say, well, I guess this isn't working out, have a nice life. They are volatile and spark plugs and explosions and firecrackers. What was it like to write that? And you made them seem very realistic. I mean, it feels like they're real people. How did you get inside their heads like that?
I think just to understand the psychology behind them, everybody loves the feeling of falling in love. That beginning part when everything is great and colors are brighter and everything tastes better and everything's, that honeymoon period. And what Wes and Ivy do really is they recreate that. Every time they break up and get back together, they recreate the feeling of falling back in love with each other. And that's where their relationship is stuck. They never move on from it because they keep just doing it over and over again. The problem is, like drugs or alcohol or any addiction, it has to get more dramatic every time in order to get the feeling. So all of their breakups and their reconciliations become bigger and bigger, and it just keeps progressing. But that's exactly what they want. This is what they want. This is their perfect relationship. So I think I had to, in order to make them real, I had to make it that neither one of them is unhappy with this situation. They aren't really trying to stop it. They kind of think they are, but they aren't. No one is abusing the other, or no one thinks that they're being abused. They don't believe that that's where they are. They believe this is what they want.
Yes, and that comes through, and that's really an interesting place that you put the reader, because we do understand that this is what they want. It isn't that they don't. When we're thinking, "Oh, are you kidding me? I would not stay there for a minute." But you've beautifully written their motivations and their psychology and their personalities to let us understand why they're doing what they're doing. Did you think of it when you were writing it as clinically as that, as being like addiction, that the high has to be, there's more and more and more and more? Or did that just sort of come through because you're such a good writer?
I think it was half and half. I was kind of thinking of it in that way, and I wanted to make sure it didn't get, nothing ever comes to the point of abuse, as certainly not physically abusive, but even not emotionally abusive, where you're tearing your partner down and telling them they're stupid and dumb and ugly and all of it. Like they don't treat each other like that. They just constantly break up and get back together. So there is another form of a relationship in the book, another one of the characters who was in an emotionally abusive relationship. And I did that on purpose so that readers could see all of these different types of relationship. This is what a classic emotionally abusive relationship looks like. And then here's Wes and Ivy. Now, it's up to you to decide what you think is healthy or not healthy or toxic or whatever word we're using these days for this. I've just presented these relationships and I'm not labeling them. It's up to you as a reader to decide for yourselves what you think they are.
And that's why you call it a twisted love story, because it is indeed depends on how we think of it and how we look at it. But underneath it is a murder mystery as well.
Yes, exactly. There is a murder. There is a death. I guess you can argue whether or not it's a murder, but it's and there is a detective, and there is their secrets that they have, and the secrets that they have to each other. And they do lie to each other. So but it's all part of their game. So it's all sort of wrapped up together.
I mean, the secrets are such an engine of this book, because Wes and Ivy are so no holds barred about their relationship with each other up to a certain point. And there's certain moments that they're not going to return to, and certain things that they're not going to talk about with each other. And certain holds that they have over each other. I'm being really careful, you all. And from the standpoint of your readers are wise, and your readers are going to try to figure out what's going to happen. Of course, we all do. And you keep us on it's such a juggling act, such a tightrope, or all those circus metaphors that I'm coming up with now for you to make a tough, tight, smart plot that holds together perfectly with these riotously gaslighty characters who have some motive that we aren't quite sure of, and we just don't ever know who to believe, and you make that fun. So Samantha Downing, talk a little bit about that process.
I actually think of it as a game. I think when you write thrillers and your readers are thriller readers, you're both playing a game. And we know what the game is. The game is You want to figure out what I'm doing. I don't want you to figure out what I'm doing. And the ideal scenario is that the twists make sense, and maybe you figured out part of it, but you didn't figure out the whole part of it. You didn't figure out everything, because as a thriller reader, you want to be surprised, and you actually want the writer to be better at it than you are, because that's the writer. But at the same time, you don't want the writer to make you feel stupid, because I hate feeling stupid. So I don't want a writer to make me feel stupid.
One thing that you do so gorgeously too is you're not tricking anyone. There's nothing that's tricky. This book is completely fair. They say what they believe to be true up to a certain point. Everybody has secrets. And I do think sometimes, I'm not talking about this book, but just in general, in reading or watching thrillers, that sometimes it's fun to be able to figure out, as you say, some of it, but then it's just as surprising when you think, oh, I didn't know that part. I didn't figure out that part. Do you try to figure out books and movies as you're watching and reading?
Most of the time I do. And what I try to do is, I know thriller readers are smart, and they've read a lot of thrillers, and they're looking for it. And I know they're looking for it. So if I say something very specific, like, he put the photograph in the desk drawer, that is so specific. I have now told you that photograph is going to be important. You know that, I know that, and you're thinking to yourself as a reader, okay, that photograph is super important now, and it's in the desk drawer. What I would do as a writer is do something completely unexpected with that desk and that photograph. You think it's going to be important, but you know what? I'm going to burn the house down. And there it goes. And then now it's gone. And now the burnt up photograph becomes a totally different plot point. So you may see some of the things along the way. You just may not see how it comes all together. And as a thriller writer, that's the best I can do, because thriller readers are going to see the clues coming. They just might not know what I'm going to do with that clue.
And which is one of the things I love about your novels, and thinking about you though as a pantser, and not knowing where the story is going. That means that sometimes there'll be a thing that's like a clue that you don't know is a clue. You've put something in that you don't know, an ingredient that you don't know how you're going to use, or even, I bet sometimes, if you're like me, you don't even know why you put it there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Things like that happen to me. I have to definitely in revisions. That's what I have to. There are things that sometimes I put in books that I think are going to be a clue, but then I don't use it later. So I end up taking it out so as not to, unless it's good. I don't want to confuse people to think. I don't want to have all these loose threads that never get tied up. So there are definitely times I drop something in the book thinking, oh, I could do something with that later. And it just doesn't happen. So I have to take it out in revisions.
But on the good side of that, sometimes you'll put something in sort of casually and not meaningfully. And then later you think, oh, that's why the photograph was in the drawer.
Exactly.
And you think, I have that ingredient that that even I didn't realize was there. And that's, so that's sort of the joy of the pantser writer figuring out their story along the way. I mean, do you have those moments when you think, oh, that's why I did that?
Oh, totally. Totally. That actually happened in For Your Own Good. In the first chapter, the teacher, Teddy, was biting his cuticles. And to me, it was just a weird character trait. And then by the end of the book, I was like, I'm so brilliant. Thank God he bites his cuticles, because now I can use that. So, sometimes it works out perfectly.
What do you think about that? And, I remember Sue Grafton used to call that the magic, that there was something that was going on in writers' brains that was, that you almost couldn't even put your fingers on, that it was some way that our brains worked that you just sort of have to allow.
Yep. I would say that's true. And sometimes it all starts to click. And for me as a pantser, if I get to about the 20,000, my books are somewhere around 85,000 words, something like that. And when I get to the 20,000 word mark, I kind of know if it's going to be big enough for a book, or if the story is too narrow and it's not going to work. And by the time I get halfway through, if I continue on from that point, when I get halfway through, I should start to see multiple ways it could go, in multiple ways it could come together in the end. Like I just have to write it at that point and start really making some hard choices about where I'm going to go with it. But the story has to get bigger in my head for me to put it on the page.
But when it starts to work, isn't that the best?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely the best. And things start clicking and you think, oh, I've got that. This is going to work. I can pull this all together.
I just got goosebumps when you said that, because it certainly does work in a twisted love story. I have one more question, maybe two, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. The dialogue between Wes and Ivy, when they are together and when they are talking to each other, just zooms along. It's hilarious and dark and twisted and funny and full of gaslighting. Was it fun to write them together?
Oh, absolutely. I think their scenes were some of the most fun to write in the book because they had a chemistry to me that jumped off the page. And they have, with 10 years of history, they just had this banter back and forth that was constant. And you could see why they enjoyed each other, because they could read each other's signals and they knew each other so well. And they knew exactly how to push the buttons. Everybody, when you're in a long-term relationship, you always know how to push somebody's buttons. So it's they knew exactly how to do it. They were a lot of fun to write.
And it's so much fun to read. Highly, highly, highly recommended. A twisted love story. What did you learn kind of about yourself as a writer in writing this book, if anything? I know that's sort of out of the clear blue for a question.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that nothing is set in stone. I made a lot of changes to this book. I changed the ending after I turned it in, and that you just sometimes it's not a factual book, it's fiction. So you really can change it around and do whatever you want with it. Never to be too set in, it has to be like this or it has to be like this. Just the better way is just to open your mind and say, okay, I could see how this could work better, and this would be a better path for this to go.
I love hearing about the inside stuff, because whatever decisions you made along the way, they were marvelous, absolutely marvelous, a really unique and twisty, as it said, love story. Unlike any, I mean, first of all, the cover, that, the crushed flowers, when you saw that, what did you think about that?
I thought it was, what I love is the movement of it, the motion of it, as if grabbing the rose and crushing it, and then the petals are falling. So it actually has sort of, and they're a little blurred. So there's a motion to it. And it was perfect for them, that at some point somebody gave the other one a flower and they crushed it. And that's exactly what they would do.
It's wonderful, because you think about throwing rose petals on people, like when you get married or when you have some wonderful event, and this is like crushed rose, which is exactly the opposite of what Renee was saying, that she loves all of your books. So that's incredible. Let's take some questions from the audience before we do the giveaway. Did I tell you there's a giveaway? Have I forgotten that as well? We are giving away a copy of A Twisted Love Story to one lucky commenter today. So quick, leave a question or a comment for Samantha so you can be entered to win a copy of A Twisted Love Story. So let's take your questions. Renee said, did the characters in this novel speak to you, and did they change your story plans at all?
The story speaks to me. I guess it's the character's voice, but I'm essentially typing what I hear, the way I'm writing in my head before I'm writing on the page. So I don't have aside conversations with them. If they're speaking to me, I'm writing it. So I suppose they speak. I hear their voice in my head, but they're not saying other things.
Time for dinner, do the laundry.
Right.
But it does come through so beautifully that, sometimes when you're really in the zone, it's as if you're not typing, but you're just transcribing what someone says. And that's what comes through so gorgeously in your book. Yeah. Rose, hey, Rose, welcome. Glad that you're here today. Says, who is the author that inspired you? What a nice question.
Well, there's so many. I mean, I have so many favorite authors. I have to start with Gillian Flynn, because if I had not read Gone Girl or Girl on the Train, I probably would never have had My Lovely Wife even published, or written, let alone published. I mean, they really, especially Gillian Flynn, really started the explosion of marriage thrillers or domestic thrillers. And I love her writing regardless. So I don't care what she's writing. I just love the way she writes. And I mean, I could list Hank. I love Hank's writing. I love Hannah Mary McKinnon and Samantha Bailey and Mary Kubica and Carolyn Kepnes, who wrote You, the whole You series. She's incredible. So I'm inspired by so many writers. Every time I read, I think I'm inspired by something.
And it's interesting because when this question gets asked of other writers, they often mention you. And so how does that feel to you to sort of be in a group of writers who write this kind of novel, this kind of relatable, twisty, gaslighty, compelling sort of novel? Did you always want to be a writer?
I always wrote. I never really thought it would be possible to write for a living. It seemed like such an impossible task. So I wrote as a hobby while working a regular job in an office. And I really just did it really as a hobby, the same way people have hobbies where they play the guitar or they learn to be a gourmet cook or whatever. I wrote. And now I do it for a living, and it really all happened as a fluke. So it was something that when the opportunity came around, I had written multiple books and had 20 years. No, I never thought about doing it as a career. I never thought it was possible.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations. Let's take a couple more questions. Are all your books standalones? Asks Janine.
Yes, they are. Each book is a standalone story.
Because you take those people and make their lives miserable.
Yes.
No, you're done with them when the books are done.
It's true.
Catherine says, did you need to do any research for this novel? I mean, Wes's milieu is very interesting as well. I mean, he's has an attitude as a business person, and he's, connected to his calendar, and everything has this structure. Did you need to do any research for this or about police procedure?
Yep, there was some I did in terms of the police procedure, and then some of the background into the different types of relationship, especially the emotional abuse and what technically qualifies as emotional abuse. That there are actually definitions for these words, and it's not just anything. So I did a lot of research into that kind of thing as I defined all the relationship, as I wrote all the relationships in the book. I knew people would be giving them labels and turning to therapy speak and that kind of thing. So I wanted to make sure which spectrum I was on for each of them.
Well, it's definitely authentic, whether you can label them, whether the reader can label them or not. We all know people who are like those people, and that's everything you could ask for in it.
And when I was young, we used to call it a roller coaster relationship. Like that was how we called it. So it wasn't like, it was like, oh, that's that couple that breaks up and gets back together all the time. And that was just what we'd say about them. It wasn't like a label. So I just thought of them in my head as a roller coaster relationship.
And earlier, though, you called them a tornado of a relationship, because in a roller coaster, they're riding something. But in a tornado relationship like Wes and Ivy, they're creating their own storm.
Right, exactly.
And that's great. That's great. One last question. Are you going on tour, says Sharon?
Mostly just an online tour. I live in Northern California, so I have one or two live events I'll be doing here, but I'm not traveling around the country this time.
And you can go anywhere by way of the internet, and we are glad to be
exactly
the starting point of the fabulous tour for the fabulous A Twisted Love Story by Samantha Downing. I want you all to go pre-order this. It comes out July the 18th. It's a perfect summer book, a perfect beach book, a perfect book to curl up with and just be happy it's not you. And that's all I can say. But one of you will not have to go buy the book. One of you will be able to take it home ASAP, and we will spin the wheel of fun right now to find out who is our winner. Look at all the people here today. Let's see who wins this. And that winner is Chang Moi Kun, that is Emily. That is wonderful, Emily. So glad that you have won this book today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are such a stalwart viewer of First Chapter Fun and of Crime Time, and we are always, always thrilled to see you. And wow, you are lucky today. You win this book. Samantha, I want you to, after this is over, to take a moment and look at the comments because there is so much affection for you. You have so many fans who have watched this interview and so many people who cannot wait to read this book. How are you feeling right now? Are you ready to go?
I think it's always exciting, nervous, all a mixture of it, when it's a week out, and just hope people enjoy it and recommend it and buy it and hope it does well and hope it gives people some exciting diversion for a few hours.
That is very absolutely so. A twisted love story. Please look for this in your local bookstore or in your library. We don't care how you get it, but you will not want to miss A Twisted Love Story by the fabulous Samantha Downing. Thank you for beginning our third year together. This is sort of a moment. We'll need to make this happen again.
And happy birthday to Crime Time.
That's so great. Thank you. I think we should all go have cake. We'll all go have cake.
Yes.
Let me remind you quickly, we will be back here at 4 p.m. ET next week for our regular edition of Crime Time with Look Who's Coming, May Cobb, with a likable woman. Look at that cover. Does she look that likable to you? I think there is certainly something about May Cobb's writing, which is, oh gosh, sensual and twisty and juicy drama. Juicy hot drama in a likable woman, climately hot, like in a hot climate. Now I've just talked myself into a real corner here, so I will just hold up. I will just hold up this steamy cover again and urge you to be here next week at 4 p.m. ET to talk with May Cobb about her brand new A Likeable Woman. May indeed is a more than likable woman, and I can't wait for you to meet her. Meanwhile, until then, thank you, Samantha. Love to you all. And remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.